All right. Let me see. Hey, Amy, I'm going to make you co-host and you just let people in, okay? If anyone else comes in. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I am just so delighted to have my friend Ruth Simons on the call with us, and for her to pop in to our Writer's Block meeting is really special, and I'm just really grateful for her time. If you know anything about Ruth, you know that she is a multi-talented person. I have her newest book, Pilgrim, here. I just got it recently, and you guys know her work. She is just an amazing writer and artist, watercolorist. She's an entrepreneur. She's a podcaster. She's a speaker. Oh, and by the way, she has 6 boys. So she's a busy lady. So I'm really grateful that she joined me here today. And we just want you guys to feel like we've got about 30 minutes with Ruth. So I want to get to your questions. And so feel free to just write those in the chat and let us know what your burning questions are. But first of all, I just want to say welcome. Thank you, Ruth, for joining us today.
I'm super honored to be here. Nice to meet you, ladies. It's really fun to do the everybody on the screen moment, because I feel like that's so much better than just chat boxing. But it's nice to see your faces, and grateful to be here for a few minutes.
Yeah. So Ruth and I have a fun, colorful history together. We started a school together in New Mexico back in 2008, a long time ago. And I worked with her husband, Troy, a lot. We served together on a board. Our kids grew up together. Both of our sons attend GCU together. And so we've just been able to pop in and out of each other's lives over the last decade plus. And I've been able to have a unique vantage point of Ruth's career and saw her at the very beginning. I don't know if you all are aware, she has a store, an online store called Gracelaced. And I just saw, Ruth, that you guys are 10 years old, which is amazing.
10 years next week. It's
Next
literally
week.
like, it's so weird that it's been 10 years. I was blogging for before that. So in terms of what gracelaced.com was, I was a blogger and was in the exact position of like, I don't know if my writing is supposed to turn into anything, but I was writing for my own heart and for others to be able to experience and witness like my growth and what was happening then. And so Cara and I were friends during that season, where I still remember being at your house and telling you maybe the very first time I met Sally Clarkson, or first time when some people were asking about speaking at a blogging conference and things like that. And so those were early years. I would say that's a good if Gracelaced shop has been around for a decade, the blog is celebrating, I think, like 16 years. And so somewhere in that season, right before the product started launching, was when you and I probably talked a lot more about writing in that particular season.
We did. I remember a car ride to your house, and I was talking to you about blogging, and I remember that's how Ruth got started, you guys. She started with a blog, and the story of how her artwork launched was kind of coincided with the blog. And I remember you telling the story about doing a challenge of painting every day, right? Or doing it was like a challenge you did online, and it just exploded. Like, her career just really took off from that point. But
I would love to speak to that, because I feel like while you all are consolidating your questions, I feel like this is something that is asked of me a lot. So I just want to volunteer it, in that I think there is always something to be said of being at the right place, right time, God ordained seasons. Like, I definitely think that I was writing, painting, and on social media at a time when that was like really the beginning of a lot of people starting to do some of these things. I was not on that early wave where Ann Voskamp or Angie Smith was first writing, like previous to even where I was at. But I do feel like there was a lot of energy during that time. Whereas right now, all of us are writing in a very saturated market, and it's not exactly the same as it was 10 years ago. However, I think the other component to that is that when Cara mentions that I started doing this challenge, the only people who knew that I was painting were the people in my real life who saw me donate a painting once a year to a fund.
Oops. I think you muted. Oh, there you are.
Oh, I don't know how that happened.
You said you were donating
I
a
didn't
piece of
I didn't
art
touch
to
anything. Yeah. So the only people who knew I painted at the time were those who were in my local community, saw a painting that I would create once a year to do a fundraiser, whatnot. But when I joined a 30-day challenge, it was a blogging challenge. And I actually included this other element of creativity with the blogging challenge. And so the component that I'm wanting to address is that, yes, there's always a right place, right time, knowing the right connections, or having some opportunity that you didn't even expect. But the other side of it is that challenge came after a season of basically blogging every day for a really long time. There was one year that I blogged every single day and didn't miss a day, because that was a challenge to myself. And so I'm sure this is said in multiple ways in your community, but I think in any writing community, it's really worth saying that sometimes we do things for a really long time and no one sees all the work behind the scenes. And you might just see it like, wow, it exploded. It was amazing. And some of that's true in that, yes, sometimes something goes viral. Yes, sometimes something just, gets picked up and the rest is history. But a lot of the story behind the scenes is the hard work of honing that craft for a really long time. And so even with that 30-day challenge, the 30-day challenge wasn't the one thing that catapulted my career. It was that 30-day challenge allowed for my art to have a place with my blogging for 30 days in a row, because I chose to include it. But prior to that, I had actually written for a really long time in a very consistent manner that wasn't necessarily viral or big or anything like that. So I just
yeah.
wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, I so appreciate that, because I think a lot of us feel that tension of like, it feels like you're slogging it through sometimes, and you're
Mhm.
doing all of that pre-work of just developing a practice, getting better at the art of writing. You obviously combine the actual physical art with your writing, and that's a unique thing to you. And so I see people are writing questions. I'm going to do my best to get through some of your questions. I know our time is limited with Ruth, but Melissa wants to know, Ruth, like, with all the things that you do, what brings you the most joy, and where do you find that time to like refill? Because
Mhm.
you're pumping out books like crazy, a book a year, I think. And so, um, there's that element of like, this needs to bring you joy. It's also work. How do
Yeah.
you find that
Yeah.
balance?
I think there's weekly rhythms and seasonal rhythms, right? So like on a weekly basis, I have to be online quite a bit. So I have to be offline a lot as well. Um, I really do think I'm like an eighth grade girl, and it sucks me dry to be on social media too much. Like I definitely, all the things apply. Like all of my feelings in eighth grade apply as a late 40s woman. I mean, I
Yeah.
feel all the things. I struggle. I wonder, question my whole life regularly if I'm not taking a breath away from things. And so I think what happens in the industry is you can get so focused on the producing of things that you are not replenishing. And I know that Cara really loves and cares deeply in her work to consider like what it is that fills us up and how do we have leisure involved in our lives. And so that idea is not just like having free time, but being freed in our souls to grow and to actually have input that strategically affects our output. And so the thing that we say around my house a lot, and my husband loves to say it to me, is really just that I need to be growing at a rate that's faster than I'm outputting books. And
Mm.
so I have some accountability in my life for that. That doesn't always look like reading books or podcasting or like pumping up, like lots of sermons on, playing. It can be that. It could be truly didactic in that way. But a lot of times it's about me experiencing other forms of creativity, having a dance party with my boys, being offline on the weekends and going for a hike. Even though I don't love hikes, but I love nature. And so subjecting myself to something I'm not good at is really good for my soul. So for some of you, it might mean that you try watercoloring, even if you're like, I can't draw a stick figure, but you choose a different medium because it actually opens something up to learn something new. And so that is a great form of rest. But I think that weekly Sabbathing, that weekly, like trying to have a rhythm of just like including rest in your life is really huge. I'm not terribly good. I haven't been super good at it in the last 7 years of my like published author life to like do seasonal Sabbathing. But, currently my assistant is like literally blocking off 2 months of next summer, like saying
Oh, that's so great.
you're literally not going to, you're not taking any speaking engagements. We're going to work out your social media so the algorithms don't hate you, but you're not going to be on, and so, earlier this summer, my husband and I were on a 25th wedding anniversary in Paris. And I literally chose to post one picture of us at the Eiffel Tower on the day of our anniversary just to record that moment. But we didn't story it. We didn't Instagram it. I didn't post a thing. And it was maybe one of the most freeing, relaxing things to like basically turn the whole thing off and not make everything about content. And I think that that's a rhythm that we need to learn, is that not everything you experience in life has to be content. It doesn't have to be an illustration for your writing. It doesn't have to be a social media post. You don't have to turn it into a series, and it won't be wasted because it actually will do something within your own soul. And in time, maybe it's 5 years from now, it can be reworked into something that will come out in a different form, but you don't have to immediately turn around and turn everything you experience into content. So those are
That's
some things.
so
Yeah.
good. That's so good because I do think we're in that. Like we all feel the effects of the machine, right? Like it's
Mhm.
like we need to constantly be feeding the content producing machine as if it really exists. But I think that's so important that you really intentionally like live in those moments and maybe store them up for later, right? You don't always have to immediately turn around
Yeah. I
and
see
use that.
Marissa's question, but I want to make sure I answer Melissa's real quick before we move
Yes.
on to the next question, because her specific question was what brings me most joy. And I think that changes from season to season. So sometimes I love painting. Sometimes I love just knocking out 5,000 words and feeling super sense of accomplishment that I actually had that much to say. But my favorite part of the whole industry, because y'all know that, and I see Marissa's question addressing this, being a writer is not just about writing anymore. It's really about creating content. You turn into a videographer. You have to be a face, a personality online. Sometimes you speak. It's like the whole package these days. And so I, rather than resisting it, which I will answer that question because speaking is not necessarily my favorite, but I realize that one of the things that brings me most joy is actually meeting the people who read my books. It actually helps me to show up as my real self, not perfect, and to hear these real stories, hug people's necks, not go sit in the green room the whole time, and to actually meet people. And so it keeps me humble. It keeps me more raw and real than social media allows, because you might meet people on social media and hear comments, but it's not the same thing as meeting somebody real face to face. So that's one of my favorite parts of my job, is to actually like allow myself, allow other people to have access to me. I guess that's what I should say,
Yeah. And like you said to me earlier, like the demands are high, right? And so giving people that opportunity is such a thing, such a gift to them and to you too, because then you get to see how your words
Mhm.
are impacting people's lives.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you
But to
for that,
address Marissa's question about
Marissa. Yeah.
speaking, I'm glad I could read that and see it ahead of time here. I think there's no way, no matter what someone tells you, you could have a literary agent or someone who says, I can sign you up for a speaking coaching program, no matter how many things you sign up for. And I've never actually signed up for one of those, probably should have, but you cannot shortcut through the difficult and messy process of speaking and learning to get on stage and sweating through everything, having your mic drip. Like, you cannot shortcut that process. It really is just that
So
hard.
true.
And so I'm going to give the exact tip that I think is probably repeated in this community about writing, which is, if it's worth doing in front of 3,000 people, it's worth doing in front of 3. And so you really do need to start small. Like, rather than feeling like, oh, I got to prepare a message that's going to be great at Women of Joy in a national stage, you got to start doing it by inviting 5 women over and saying, I have something I want to share on my heart. Come over for tea. And that's a small speaking thing. And then maybe you know, volunteer to do it without charging a fee in your local community. Like, start with small
Start where you
groups,
are. Yeah.
start where you are. And I think that helps train more than anything. I would also say, early on, and I've learned not to do this, but early on, I would almost like apologize to the event person before I even started. And I'd be like so tempted to be like, I will give your money back. I promise. Like, I just want, because I was so insecure, I'd be like, I'm so sorry if I'm terrible. But what I realized over and over is that, it really is the picture of recognizing that your vulnerability and your authenticity and your willingness to be who you are will go so much further than you being like somebody else. And so I was early on sharing stages with Christine Kane or Jenny Allen or Ann Voskamp or somebody who spoke really differently than me. I mean, I remember the first time Chris Kane was like doing push-ups on the ground. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to speak and do push-ups. Like, I literally
That's
can't.
not my jam.
Or finding myself in the same room and speaking with Candace Cameron Bure, who has a history of being on TV. That is really different. And I've had women literally say to me, I'm really glad that somebody who doesn't yell, because I'm not a yeller. I'm just not. And this is about, I mean, sometimes I get real excited and my eyebrows do this, but I don't actually yell at you. I don't talk super fast. And sometimes women are like, thanks for being somebody like you, because I didn't know that somebody with my personality who's a little more quiet could have space on a stage. And so be yourself.
That
You might
I
first
love
get to
that.
see.
So yesterday I did my second Bible study live teaching at my church. And so I was like ripping out the deodorant like 3 or 4
Yeah.
times before I had to go. I had to pee like 3 or 4 times. Like, that struggle is so real. And then you listen to yourself and you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I had a different voice. I wish I could, intonate better. And yeah, but I appreciate that so much because there's only one you, right? And so we spend so much time, like even in our writing lives, trying to be something different than
Yeah.
who we are. And yet God has given us these unique skills and giftings that he wants us to use. So that's really encouraging. What would you say, Ruth, to somebody who is, at the beginning? Like, you're no longer at the beginning, but you were once, and knowing what you know about the publishing world, not every writer has dreams of being published, but many do. So
Mhm.
what would your advice be for somebody who's just starting out? Do you think you should just go and start your own blog? Do you feel like social media is the route? Do you think speaking's the route? Like, what are your thoughts?
I think whatever you choose, all 3 of the things that you just mentioned, blogging, speaking, or social media, are all meant to give access to your story more than just your product. So whether your product is a piece of writing or a creative piece or a poem or whatever it is, rather than just the fruit of your labors being like, ta-da, here it is, love it, buy it as an ebook or buy the real thing or buy my book, publishing company. That's one piece of it. But all the 3 done right, the blogging, speaking, and social media are all meant for people to know you and your story and why you are the only one who can share the thoughts that you're sharing. And the truth is, every single person here, I don't even know you all personally, and I know that you're the only one. It's not that, yes, you're the only one who lived your life, but you're the only one with the perspective and the window to the thoughts that you have. You can think similarly to somebody else, but you're the only one who can share it the way you do. And so I would say, whether it is through blogging or it's through social media or through speaking, you can't publish traditionally, or not even independently. You can't really share your work out there if you're not putting yourself out there in a more personal way. So rather than thinking about social media in this, like, which all of us do, it is sometimes the fun is no longer there and you just feel like this is an obligatory marketing effort, and it somewhat is. But at the same time, what you have is a free platform and opportunity. Granted, there's a lot of censoring and algorithms and all this stuff, but still, it's still an available platform in which you can hone your craft and gather people to your living room. Like, essentially, like, I like to call my social media a sense of like welcoming you into my living room of my house. And so what I would say to you, if you, like, all of you coming over to my house today, I would not sell you something the moment you come to my house. I would also not show a bunch of things off and be like, do you like this? Do you like this? Or look how great I am at this. I would actually say, how are you doing? And you know what? I've been through that too. And I can share a story from my week that hopefully will encourage you. I want to hear your thoughts too. Do you see how suddenly that changes the whole dynamic of what you're trying to do? And that same principle has to be done in blogging, that same principle in social media. And if you get on stage and you're speaking, lots of people can be Wikipedia and share a bunch of information, but not everybody can say, I've been where you're at, and I want to tell you how this has changed my life and whatever it is that you're trying to share. And so I think rather than feel the pressure of the phrase building a platform, I think you just need to challenge yourself and say, am I siloed in writing where only my two best friends and my church community or whoever knows that I want to be a writer? Or are you taking that step to say, I need to use every means possible to make the most of every opportunity, whether that means you volunteer and say, I'll be a guest, host or a speaker or Bible study leader at my church. Or you say, hey, I'm going to go pop into the places that I love reading. And rather than be this like stalker who never comments, I'm going to comment and say, I totally agree. And I love that. And if you get a chance, I'd love for you to read what I wrote about this too. And let's have a conversation, because that's putting yourself out there. That could be called social networking, or it could just be that you're actually saying, hey, I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah.
And so that matters. It matters. And so it helps you feel more motivated to do it when you don't think of it as like 10 steps to building your platform, but rather, okay, it kills me when I'm signing books and somebody says, I have this book and I'm tweaking every little word, and I've been working on it for 3 years and I really want to be published. And I go, well, where have you been sharing your thoughts about the backstory to this book? Oh, nowhere. Well, if you're not doing it anywhere, then you're probably not going to get to share the finished product, because it's not about just social media. It's about whether or not you're sharing and practicing the telling of that story.
That's so good. Don't you guys think that that's such a refreshing perspective? Because I feel like, and Ruth has challenged me on my whole social media, I don't know what I have, roadblocks, I guess, with how I
We all
view
do.
that.
Yeah.
And I think what you do so well and so naturally is that you do invite your followers in. You're very real and you're very approachable in that way. And I think that that's such a good mindset to have when we think about those elements of our story, because we have to be sharing in real life in whatever way, whatever platform you choose to focus on, versus being siloed, like you said. So I think writers, like, we like to be siloed, right? We're generally like kind of quieter, introspective people who are okay with being alone with our thoughts, and that is kind of a challenge sometimes for writers. So maybe just one last question for you, Ruth. You have a very large family, a lot going on. What kind of advice or wisdom would you share for those who are just, wondering, how do you work through all of the creative stuff that you're doing, and then also be really present, be really real with your family, really invest in your children? with the time, because we're all
Yeah.
limited with the amount of time we have every day. How do you
I
do
think
that?
whether you have young children at home or you're not in that season of life, the reality is we're all going to be the best writers based on the overflow of our real lives. I mean, we think they're separate things. We think that one is our career and one is like, oh, if I just could get this right and get my pantry clean, then I'm going to be a good mom. But the reality is like, it's all interconnected. And so the health of how we steward our relationships and our communities, and whether we have people checking in on us, whether we have mentors, all that stuff matters. Right. But I think one of the things I've really learned is that I just don't want to ever create and leave a legacy of a lot of really good work that my kids or anyone who knows me personally would ever turn around and say, oh, but that cost her. I mean, I never got to even know her. Like she's never came over for dinner. She's never available for coffee, or, oh, my mom missed all these things that are going on in my life. And so in order to have I want to make sure that my boys always know that I'm the same person that they read in the books as they see in real life. And so the best way for me to navigate that is to have a really open-handed policy with the way I share my work. So like, for example, everything from my husband or my children, basically somebody's always reading my Instagram posts. So like, I don't post anything on social media without having it be like, almost like hey, do you all think that is this really what's going on? Like, or just having them, it's not my secret life. It's not like this other thing that I'm doing. Even though they're not on social media, they can say, oh yeah, I see what you're sharing with the world. And I can I'm not rolling my eyes. Nobody's rolling their
Yeah.
eyes going, oh, I can't believe she wrote that. They read my books. And I take them on trips. And so I just came home from speaking in Atlanta, and I chose to take my third oldest with me as my assistant this time. So that helps keep that real in my life. But I think the practical side of it is also not imagining that I mean, I feel like I'm just saying things you all already know, but I'm going to say it again. Just not thinking that you can do it all. Like everything, saying good yeses means saying no to other things. If
Mm.
writing is a really important yes, and it's a priority, and it's a God-given gift, and it's something that makes you come alive, and you're born with a desire to communicate through words, then honor that gifting and honor that calling, regardless of whether or not you feel this really, deliberate calling where you're like, ooh, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. Regardless, honor that and not try to do 20 things poorly, but say, okay, I'm going to do this really well. And it's not my job to do these other things. And so that might mean not saying yes every time somebody asks you to do something. But that also might mean that you budget in a way where you don't clean your house every other week. And it might mean that you hire a babysitter. It might mean that you say, hey, I'm going to budget because I cannot think when I'm home. I don't have a home office. So I'm going to budget for headphones, and I'm going to have a coffee budget line item. And I'm going to go to the coffee shop
Yeah.
in the same spot every single week because it's worth it. It costs me money, but it's worth it. And so I think it's that reminder that um, I don't think that just because we're writers, we're supposed to say, oh, it's fine that we have piles everywhere and our house is a mess. That's not the point. It's not like everything's excused. It's that we choose our yeses wisely, and then recognize that if you're a mom with kids at home, it might mean that you have to choose what things your family puts priority on. Like, for example, our family, um, the boys have not wanted to do your typical, they're not on a baseball team, for example. So they're not traveling every weekend. That I might have to make different choices if my boys were like, we absolutely want to be professional baseball players. And that might be different. But, we make choices as a family for our family culture. And we decide how are we going to spend time as a family so that it's not me constantly living in condemnation and guilt as a mom, or always feeling like I'm not there or something. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's a
Yeah.
helpful
No,
answer.
that's really good. And I think that what you're saying too about, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Consider prayerfully the things that you're signing up for, and honor the calling if God has
Yeah.
called you to this creative journey, whatever that looks like for you. So,
but that there are limitations. I think that's maybe the thing that I just want to remind all of us is that sometimes as women and talented women, we can think ourselves limitless. And, one of my favorite, Piper quotes, John Piper said, sleep is a daily reminder that God is God and we are not. And that's the reminder that I mean, maybe your mind does come alive at night, but it means that you're going to have to say no to getting up super early if you work super late. There's going to be a limitation there, and to be honest about that and be honest with other people in your life so that you're not in a cycle of thinking yourself limitless and then being disappointed when you can't do it all.
You can't do it all. And maybe the whole doing it all is just a phrase we need to just get rid of, right? Out of our lexicon, because we can't.
Jill Briscoe, who is an older woman of faith who I've had the pleasure of speaking with sometimes, she has said, as an answer to this question, she likes to say that there are things on the front burner of your stove or the things on the back burner, and that we switch those things around sometime so that they're all simmering, but sometimes we just make the choice and say, this is a front burner season. And so it helps me kind of remember that we could be called to lots and lots of things, just not all at the same time. And so you don't have to be like, oh, I'm a writer, I'm not all these other things. It might mean that you have multifacets and God's called you to volunteer and be a mom and care for your parents, but you can't do all of those things all at the same time and write a book at the same time. Those are all things that have to be put at different priority levels.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it and thinking through our priorities for sure. Well, I want to honor your time, and I appreciate so much that you've joined us here today. You all, please check out Ruth's new book, Pilgrim. There's a glare, Pilgrim, right there. And her Gracelaced shop has beautiful things. I just want to focus attention there, that you all can go check her out and thank her for being a part of the Writer's Block. This was really sweet, and it was good to see my friend and have you all in on the conversation. So thanks you
so much for having me, ladies.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Have a great day. Thanks, Ruth.
Bye.